a local born artist who's made it to the Big Apple, and she is an amazing sculptor and artist. And I've looked at her work, Abigail. This is Abigail Tulis I have with me.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to have you here, Abigail, and to see your work, see a local born Chattanoogan artist go to New York City, Manhattan, and this is, the Art Beat of Chattanooga. It's Chattanooga and beyond. And I always like to share that Chattanooga is one of the cities leading the modern renaissance in the art world. And we may not seem like that to maybe outside people, but the local talent here, the motivation of the generation that's coming up in Chattanooga, the talent, the professionalism and ability to be movers and shakers and make it happen is very impressive to myself.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people in New York, when I tell them that I'm originally from Chattanooga, they're aware of the fact that there is some art scene over here and that there's a lot of alternative culture going on. So it is on the map as well, not just here.
Yay, Chattanooga! Yeah. So I'm Julianne Collins, your host, local artist as well. My website's Vanguard Artistry, and Abigail's website is what is the name of your website here, Abigail?
It's just abigailtulis.com.
Yes. Okay, so abigailtulis.com, and
hi,
you
this
can
is
go
Nadia
there
behind the green doors.
See some amazing art. Looks like paintings, sketches, sculptures.
Yeah, I'm doing a bit of everything these days. So trying to cross over different media and different practices and combine those things.
Yeah, so like some of us other artists, it's hard to stay in one spot because your mind is going into different projects.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many concepts to play around with. There's so much going on in the art world, so many precedents for playing, like you said, playing with these different things, that it's really hard to stay in one medium when you're more concerned with ideas.
Exactly. The ideas is what is the avenue, the driving engine, I think, of most art, is to stay, I know in some galleries, they like to see a consistency of an artist where, oh, you can tell this is this artist's work.
Right.
I struggle with that myself. Do you?
I absolutely do. In fact, that's probably more the criticism I get, where there's so many things going on here. And that's something I'm really trying to be aware of and work on right now, where you have a lot of ideas, but you're unifying them under a larger canopy.
Right. And you want to be seen as consistent, and yet the ideas are all there. Probably, I don't know about you, but I have a pretty full studio of works in progress, finished works. Now, being a sculptor, you must have a studio.
Yes, I have a studio in Long Island City. It is right across the East River from Manhattan, and it's a place where there's a lot of artists right now. It's getting to be more expensive, but unlike Brooklyn, it's not quite as up and coming yet. So
right. Yeah. So you're traveled to New York City. You were born and raised here in Chattanooga.
Yes, I lived here till I was 18.
Okay, so until you were 18, and at what point in your life did you realize you had a passion and a love for art?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I was always very creative, and I was very interested in ballet and dancing until I was about maybe 12 or 13. And at that point, I decided that maybe a smarter avenue for my creativity would be drawing and painting. So I was 13 when I decided to be an artist, but I was doing a lot of other work before then.
Right. So you were a dancer, so to speak?
I was a kid. I was a kid dancer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I suppose you still love dancing in private or whatever.
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm. So you were at 15 or so, you said, when you?
I was 13 when I decided to be an artist, and I started studying with actually Amy Wetmore. She was the daughter of Gordon Wetmore, who was a portrait painter here in Chattanooga.
Right. So you studied with a pretty well-known artist then, and somebody who gave you a real good base.
Yeah, that's when I was maybe even 12 and 13 and 14, and I studied with another teacher here. And then when I was 15, I became apprenticed to Cessna de Cosmo, and I was working for him on and off till I moved away.
That's exciting. And I was hoping you pronounce his name because I looked it up and I'm like, I'm going to butcher this.
Yeah, I do that so often. I know the feeling.
Yes. So I'm glad you said that. So, and so, you know, what brought you to the sculpture point? Because I've seen your sculptures and I find them lovely. And I believe the one that I saw, I think it's yours. It was on a website that wasn't actually your site. But did you do the one where there's a sculpture of them holding a head? Is that yours?
Yes.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. David and Goliath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And I looked at that like, that rocks.
Wait, where did you see it?
It was on that site I just showed you where the gallery.
Oh, yeah. Yes, my gallery's website. Yeah.
Yes. So the Whitney Museum of American Art, I think.
No, I wish it was there. That would be great.
Yeah. I actually didn't write it down. I was browsing through your work and that one caught my eye. I thought, I love that, you know, and it must take so much to create these figures. You know, you had to do a lot of probably figure studies and things in college.
Well, actually, my body of work, I mean, I'm still pretty young, so you can't divide it into too many different areas, but there was a lot of work I produced when I was in school. I was in New York City studying with a sculptor named Jae-Won Chae, and he's Korean. He studied in Korea. And he's very technical. So I was working under him on and off for 4 years and making a lot of figurative studies.
Yes.
And I kind of tried to turn them into something a bit more narrative, a bit outside of the realm of what the school desired. So that produced a lot of work, but I'm not making that kind of work right now.
Okay. What are you currently doing?
So currently I am working on a series of images. They're mostly paintings, ink and watercolor on paper, and they're ranging in size from 2 to 3 feet up to 5 feet. So they're quite large, and I'm sort of designing my own world and portraying sort of snapshots and images from this world of its characters and of situations. So it's really about sort of my personal experience and being able to filter the world and all the things going on in it through that.
So society and is it how you relate to society?
Yeah, some of it's more about society and some of it's more even on like a personal level, person-to-person relationships, friendships.
Could you describe one of the pieces so that I'm trying to get an idea? Yeah, that would be great.
So I'm actually working with forms that are taken from Renaissance and medieval imagery. I'm very interested in that. So it's very much figurative, not so much in a way like Impressionism, but more focusing on lines. And I'm depicting figures that are in some ways have insect elements, maybe wings, maybe thinner legs, so that the emotions are sort of accentuated. And these images, these characters, there's one of a woman and she sort of has moth attributes and she's taking a bath. So it's sort of about private moments, and then there's also ones that are more about maybe soldiers, that are about two people interacting. Some of those are more erotic or romantic in nature. Some of those are purely platonic. So
your work has a definite feel of medieval culture, at least what I've seen, and your sculptures are, what I can tell, very representational without conforming completely to an idea. You know, I see that you just utilize the clay and a lot of detail in them.
Yeah.
And so this workspace, this is your workspace? I'm looking at pictures on Abigail's website. So if you want to kind of grab your device and look at the website, you can go to abigailtulis.com and kind of look at things with us if you like. We're talking to Abigail Tulis, who is born and raised in Chattanooga and now lives in Manhattan.
Yeah. No, I'm in between homes right now. I'm going to be living in Brooklyn.
Okay. In between homes. That's an interesting way to put it.
Always bohemian lifestyle.
Love it. Love it. I'm a gypsy princess myself. I do understand. So kind of comes with the territory for some of us artists. It's, you got to keep moving with your energy.
Absolutely. And there's just so many opportunities, not just in New York, but in Europe. So this space that you were just pointing out to me, there's a series of photographs that I've taken of different workspaces that I've lived in and worked in. And This one is one that was in the Netherlands. I've been living and working in the Netherlands on and off for the past 3 years. And I live in a smaller city there called Culemborg, but I've been very fortunate to have different spaces there to live and to work. And it's really a medieval city, which kind of makes me feel like I'm living in one of my images sometimes.
Sounds like a really exciting life, Abigail, that you've seen a lot of the world already for a young woman.
I really do enjoy to travel. And I think more than travel, I think being able to live different places, that's really vital. But I think that's also something that a lot of millennials, they're sort of against tourism, but they're for travel. So my work is also exploring this idea of transience and wanting to live many places, but not as a tourist, but as an insider, and sort of this insider-outsider quality.
Right. Instead of hitting the busy spots where there's a lot of touristy boutiques and things, you can get into the actual life of the people and the culture.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's exciting. And, you mentioned the word millennial, and that's honestly, Abigail, I really believe the millennials are going to change the face of art in our nation.
I think so as well. And I think it's already really happening. And there's a lot of energy around that in New York right now that's really tangible. Just what is being displayed in museums, what was displayed at the Whitney Biennale recently. I think there's a lot of people who are quite young in my generation who are starting to produce art that people realize is much more commenting on what's going on as opposed to just something pretty to look at. Exactly.
And that's the main thing that I like to share about art is art reflects society. Society is reflected in art. They go both ways. And if you don't reflect your time period and the thoughts of the generation and of the century you live within, then we lose historical value. Right. And I think that is something that happens actually, hopefully that happens organically. And that's not something where you're saying, oh, I'm trying to make something that's relevant. Hopefully you are in touch with what's going on and that's going to shape you. So I'm trying to do that in a very organic way and to sort of be aware of these things and to let them influence me organically as opposed to trying to make something that's maybe making an open statement or talking specifically about something. Right. That's very interesting, Abigail, because my friend and I believe master artist here in Chattanooga is Morris Mitchell, and he's now 81. But his works have evolved over the years into statements that he feels are wrapping up this concepts we're talking about how he relates to the world, how the world relates to society. And yet I could look at his pieces and I might not immediately understand what he's saying because he's not trying to make it blatant. He's letting his heart, his passions lead him. So that's the real thing I love too. And so right now you're working more two-dimensionally?
Yes, I am. And two-dimensionally also kind of suits the transient lifestyle that I'm living right now. I've moved overseas and back twice in the past 2 years. So I'm kind of trying to find a way to develop my ideas and my concepts and to gather all this information, whether that's emotional or actual information on objects, so that I can build this world that I'm working on in a very easy to pack up way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Honestly, at this point, I have to take my work downtown, not have to. I'm thrilled about it, but I wrap my stuff in blankets and tie them with scarves. I mean, truly, it's like a gypsy package, and I have it down to a science.
It's very fun. It is. It's always colorful. There's always, even what you're saying, how you're packaging things with scarves, even that can be kind of inspiring, and even that can be a concept for a piece or for part of a piece later on. It's just like I wrap my dishes in scarves when I pack them all the time. So
yeah, it all comes together, and that's the thing is, it sounds like you were expressing that, yes, I want to share society through my art, but it's not so much a conscious thought of, oh, let me represent this one idea. It's a combination of things flowing through you, experience and how you perceive the world, your technical talent as well.
Yes, and I think it's really about being open and being aware of what's going on, even in very small ways around you visually, just day-to-day life. And then really what an artist does is take those things and maybe with a hyper-awareness towards them, turns them into some sort of object.
Yeah, the definition of art is, because as your father and I have debated at times about what is actually art, that's a big thing around the station is, this is art, that's not art. The actual definition that I found is that it's something created to evoke emotion in the viewer or the person experiencing it.
Yes.
So
And I think that's a very interesting thing to talk about as well, just because I grew up here in the South, and this is a pretty traditional culture, especially compared to New York City. So I had a very specific idea of what art was, and that was the representational idea. And I really had no exposure to conceptual art or to abstract art as something that was supposed to bring up ideas until maybe only 4 or 5 years ago.
right. And you're so young to already have that. That's fantastic. And I love how you said, Abigail, that in college you kind of went beyond the assignments. And it wasn't exactly what they were maybe perceiving, but you had your dream, you had the energy to go ahead and produce what you felt should be produced. So did I misunderstand that?
No, that's right. Yes. And actually it was actually not a college, it was an atelier.
Oh, okay.
So so yes, it was not a school where you have normal classes. There were only 4-hour period in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon where they provided you with a model.
Okay.
So you would have critiques from teachers.
Like Townsend Atelier?
I think it's similar. I'm not exactly sure
Okay.
how Townsend is set up, but it's like a very intense version of that, where you just have a model and you're just studying the model all day.
Right. Fabulous. That's an amazing way to go. And, I went to a traditional art college, in basically downtown Grand Rapids, not an actual art school. And yet I did a similar thing with an assignment that I went beyond, and I actually won an award, because of that. Like, right. So that's the cool thing is when you go ahead and let yourself stretch and you let the assignment or the idea be the base, from there, it's a process, like you said, representational work. And then you start shifting into ideas combined with your technical skills.
Yes. And I think that's something, for me, the idea has always been the driving factor, whether that's a concept or maybe a feeling or an emotion behind something. And I think there's not very many representational artists that are bridging the gap between conceptual art and representation. And there are a lot of representational artists who are in the art scene.
Yes, and especially I have to say here in Chattanooga, there's a few galleries who are branching out from that. And there's a lot of galleries who are kind of consistently staying in that representational area.
Right.
And that's what I see with the millennials is pushing the envelope, pushing the limit. Not in a rebellion way at all, but in ideas, in trying new things.
Right. And in having there be a platform to question things, to discuss things, and also in having the creative freedom to maybe push something and maybe have it fail, but even learn from that. And I think that's something else that I'm learning. It's really scary to do things you haven't done before, because the things you do, that you can do well.
Right.
And staying in that comfort zone is really easy. And I think a lot of people do it. And I'm trying to not do that.
Yeah, and I think that's fabulous, because that's exactly it, is if we don't push, it doesn't allow the ideas to break through.
Right. And I think what you were saying also, this reminds me of, this is something that's been going on in art history for the past 100 years. So it's not a new thing, but the idea of like Duchamp, he had something called ready-made fountain. And this was basically a men's urinal that was already made that he presented as a possible fountain. And I think this idea, I was always really against this for some reason, for unexamined reasons. And I think I've been really examining these prejudices and these ideas and realizing that he wanted people to question things when he did that. He wasn't saying this is beautiful. He wasn't saying this is a crafted thing. He wanted people just to say, okay, what's going on?
Right. It's something that everyone sees in everyday life.
Right.
And it's almost like when you make your bed. And I read a poem I used to edit the college magazine, and there was one about the main part of the poem I remember is how we make our bed to hide the evidence that we were sleeping, you know, and that's sort of same idea, maybe, like every day we see these urinals or whatever, and yet they're kind of hidden,
Right. And also maybe even repurposing them or viewing it instead of as a urinal, viewing it as a porcelain object.
Right.
So I think those sorts of playing with ideas and tinkering with our assumptions is very interesting.
Yes. So, so what would you say the heart of your passion? Is there something you'd like to share right now that you're really an idea you're really grappling with, or something that you're bringing forth in your art right now that you want to share?
Honestly, right now I'm sort of in a collecting phase, and I'm just looking around me a lot. I'm reading a lot. I'm writing a lot. And I'm going to a lot of exhibits in the city because that's one of the benefits of being in New York. I mean, it's very expensive, but then when I'm there, I think, okay, I'm leading this expensive life. I should just see as much as I can of what's happening. So I'm very interested in a few things that I've seen recently that I'm sort of digesting right now.
Okay.
There's an exhibit at the Jewish Museum in New York City, and it was a visual exploration with contemporary art of the writings of a philosopher named Walter Benjamin. And he's just a really fascinating person. I recommend you look him up if you get a chance. But he wrote a lot, and he also collected and selected other people's writings to make sort of this way to organize the chaotic, modernizing world in his mind. And it's not really an answer. It's just sort of a way of addressing chaos. And I think his writings are very fascinating. He also talked a lot about how mass production was changing what art was. He wrote a lot about that.
Oh, that's a big one right now.
Yeah, which is really big. And I think that's even more so with how everything's digital now.
That's a really good point. And are you going to stay for the second half? Because I've got some other questions if you've got time.
Sure,
get into. Okay, because let's cover that in the second half. You know, a millennial artist's view of the digital age versus traditional forms of art. I'm a painter.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
flat out. And I enjoy digital imaging with photos and this sort of thing, but I got to have the paint. You know, it's on my computer screen. It's on my house. It's splattered on the walls of my studio. It's probably on my body at this moment. I mean, everywhere I go, I have paint on me.
It's sort of where you put that line where is the digital going to come into your working practice and where is it not? And there's many artists who do it very different ways.
And now it's becoming the actual final piece of art, though.
Right.
I mean, you know, a lot of people are satisfied with digital art as their art form and purchasing that and putting it in their home. I'm a little bit more connected to the elements of the brush and the paint and the blending, you know, but with my hand that way.
Right. So that's the process versus maybe a more conceptual minded person is going to say, I just care about the concept. I don't care about.
Yeah. And I bet you they would say something different, the digital artists, because they've learned to manipulate that to their will, the way they like it.
Yeah.
But I just, you know, like you, when you work with clay or another medium, there's something about the energy of that medium with your hands and, you know, your eyes that I just love blending it, creating transparencies, opaqueness, whatever.
No, I agree. I always kind of joke that I'm really quite medieval because I need to have something physical I've made at the end of the day. I need to have my hands on it, my hands dirty. And, you know, if I'm just doing emails or if I'm just working on my website, I don't feel like I've accomplished very much. And I realize other people are wired totally differently. But for me, you know.
There's that driving force, you know, sometimes, and I'm so thankful I am an artist, but sometimes it does feel like, how am I ever going to get all of these ideas out of my, you know, in this lifetime? And sometimes it's overwhelming. And I think maybe artists can put a lot of pressure on themselves to have that physical creation.
Right.
And like you said, right now you're going through a gathering time of learning and looking at mediums and other work and things. So, well, that one quickly through that first half. We've got Abigail Tulis here, local born Chattanooga artist, now living between cities, apparently. So kind of a gypsy like myself. And we're going to be back to talk some more about the digital age, millennials. So I'm going to give you a phone number when we come back. If you want to comment in, give us a call and talk with Abigail yourself. So we'll be back in just a few minutes with the heartbeat of Chattanooga on Chattanooga Radio, 92.7 FM, 1240 AM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You've been in a wreck.
756-6400.
You've been wrongfully fired.
756-6400.
A turkey is suing you out of the blue.
756-6400.
Confused about a business startup?
756-6400.
That's the number for you. 756-6400. Right here, right now, Chattanooga. Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. Get biz advice now. Representation to fight for your right. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Don't sit on your rights. You've got remedies. Turn your tragedy into cash. You've got the solution from estate planning all the way to probate. Act now. Top attorneys in Chattanooga are waiting to help you get relief. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win. So win with us.
756-6400.
Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Turn your tragedy into cash. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win. So win with us.
756-6400.
756-6400.
Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh-made pizza. And in a flash, let it take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out at Jet's in Hickson or take home your steaming deep dish square pizza, you'll love Jet's. They use only the best ingredients in a family recipe. Also try the cheesy bread, wings, chicken, or bread with bacon, antipasta or Greek salad. Jet's Pizza at Buy Low near the S Curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. You can order online or have it delivered. jetspizza.com. That's jetspizza.com. Or call them now. They'll have it ready when you get there. 757-1616. That's 757-1616.
Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Chattanooga cops say they found a bullet-riddled body on Lightfoot Mill Road. They say it belonged to Deontay James, who they claim is a validated gang member. The Violent Crimes Bureau now trying to find out if the shooting was gang-related or not. A grisly discovery behind the former rave theater. A 21-year-old woman was found hanged to death in an apparent suicide. Family members say that the unnamed woman was suicidal after a breakup with her husband. The Chattanooga Police Department has confirmed that an officer was arrested on DUI charges, apparently blowing an 0.144 blood alcohol level in a breathalyzer test. He's been put on paid administrative leave. Michael Allen Trumbo, who's 28. In Walker County, the debt situation is so bad that the deficit is $7.5 million. County Commissioner Shannon Whitfield is holding special meetings to talk to the public about the problem. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Not as wet out there for your afternoon, with showers and thunder showers becoming more isolated. Still lots of clouds, highs lower 80s. Tonight, mostly cloudy, some late fog, lows 70 to 72. For Friday and Saturday, a few widely scattered, mainly afternoon showers and storms, highs 85 to 87. Check out Lowe's and get an extra 5% off every day with your Lowe's Advantage card. Subject to credit approval and can't be combined with any other credit offers. Exclusions apply. See store for details. And I'm Source Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr on Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Welcome back to the Art Beat of Chattanooga, where art lives. I'm your host, Jill Ann Collins, and this is Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM, 1240 AM. We're broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and over the airwaves here in Chattanooga. I'm very excited today to have Abigail Tulis as my guest on the show. Hi, Abigail.
Hi, Jill. Thank you.
Very nice to see you. So we were talking in the first half all about how this young lady has come from Chattanooga, traveled around the world with her art, your art, and you are a up-and-coming growing artist, but you also have had some quite level of success, I understand.
Yes, somewhat. Yes.
Yes.
That's always relative, I think, but yeah, it's what you make it out to be.
It is, and that's an interesting point too, Abigail, because I never really thought about myself as selling a lot of work until I looked back over the years and realized, okay, I've sold a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, in my earlier days, we didn't have the ease of recording things, photographing things so readily as they are now. And it's just out there in the abyss. I don't know where most of my work that I did in school was, and they're all sold, like all my oil paintings.
Yeah.
So
I think the idea of archiving your own work is something I've been thinking about a lot, but it's really, even though I do have an easy way to record things, sorting them and organizing them and really curating that is a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing the past 3 days, is creating my Excel sheet for my gallery work that I'm going to hang. And it is a lot of work, and then you have to part with it in your heart, your piece that you may love.
Right.
Price it. That's a hard thing.
That's the hard thing, yeah.
That's very difficult, and some pieces I've had to give myself permission to just keep.
Yeah. Pricing is it's a hard thing for me as well. And it's also very different because in New York City, you can sell things if you sell something for under a few $100s, people think you're not for real. You're not serious. But then you go somewhere else, maybe in Chattanooga or when I'm in Europe, and if I say, oh, it's $60, people think I'm ripping them off. So it's really incredible how, prices change according to the region you're in, according to perceived value.
Oh, I thought I better move to New York City.
Well, yes, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So, we've been talking in the first half about a lot of things, about what you've done and how you were trained. So let's review for anybody who's just joining us. You were about 13 when you decided you wanted to be an artist, or that you were an artist.
Yes, and then I was studying with a few different local artists, but mainly with Cessna de Cosmo. And then when I was 18, I moved to New York City, and I studied there at the Grand Central Academy. It's an art atelier with a sculptor there.
So you had a lot of life drawing opportunities there.
Actually, I was sculpting from life mostly, and I was also spending, honestly, I played hooky all the time, and I would just go to the Met Museum and draw there.
I see.
So yes, I didn't even graduate. I stopped going to school when I started to get big commissions.
Well, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
School can be very helpful and teach you a lot of technique, but it can, if you're taking off with an art form, I can see where it could hinder you because they're going to want you to do all other things.
Yes, and I think also in certain schools, especially the school I went to, it was very figurative, and they claimed to be very classical. They kind of have a agenda, and they have a very specific way of viewing what art is and how you should view the world, and that was not the page I was on. I was not on the same page.
Right. As we were discussing in the first half too, you expressed that ideas are the engine of your work and your passion for creativity.
Yes.
Yeah. Ideas of the world, ideas of the culture, and relationships, interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
Let's touch on the nudes, being that you're a sculptor, and I have a series of work, and this is not about me, but it's a basis to speak with you on, because I've encountered a lot of resistance. I'm working on trying to build an organization where I will use human impressions and I do the paintings already, on the negative or positive on the canvas. I will either paint the canvas and while it's wet, impress the figure, pulling it off,
right,
or I paint the figure and place it on a prepared canvas. And the goal is to reach women with breast cancer, pre and post surgery, to help them express their journey this way.
Okay.
Help them feel beautiful or express the pain. And I go any direction. Some are very simple.
Right.
Others I've gone a lot further and added a lot of things.
Right.
But when I approach the galleries here locally, nudes, no.
Really?
Yes. And it's crazy. I mean, I'm like, have you seen the Sistine Chapel? Have you seen the statues around the world, everywhere in Chattanooga?
Yeah.
So comparatively, you've been all over the world, or a lot of places in the world, for a young woman. What is your take on, I said earlier, I believe Chattanooga is a big part of the modern Renaissance. Our millennials are on fire, and they're smart, connected people. A lot of millennials get dissed, I think, in this society and kind of pitted or teased for who they are. I see a whole different side of the generation. But what do you see worldwide, where you've been compared to here?
I think obviously there's a lot of differences in different places. I would say in major international cities, especially places like New York, pretty much everything's. And if that is, I would say the nude is something that is much more taboo in America than in Europe. So there it's not really an issue. And I would say in the South and more, in the South, it's definitely more taboo as well than in larger cities in New York.
Yeah, and these aren't even done in realistic colors. I mean, the one I did on Mother's Day, I was sad. So I used my own. I'm the most easiest model I have, so some of them I've done. And on Mother's Day, I was kind of sad because I was alone. My kids aren't in this state. And I did one I call it Panes of Gray. And it's not even human colors, you know,
Right.
but people still, because there's breasts and things, they seem to struggle with that.
Well, I think it brings up a very interesting issue of how things are very over-sexualized in our culture. And this is really something that is American. There are other countries that have this in their own flavor, but in Europe, if I go to the beach, many women there don't wear tops at the beach. And that's not a nudist thing. That's just very normal. So how people here view the nude female body or the nude body in general it's not what's normal. And I think that's an interesting thing to be aware of and to explore. And even in your work, just to say, this is something here that's shocking, but that somewhere else people will understand that this is about loss and a struggle, and it's not about nudity.
Yeah, and it's about beauty, and it's about emotion in society. You know, I love the human figure, and I haven't had as much life drawing as I would like, but I have had it, and I do pursue it in the atelier here, and this sort of thing, you know. But I just wondered, like, across other parts of the world, is it so difficult to approach a gallery because you have nudes, and they're so strange about it? And
no, it's definitely not. And I mean, I have a friend in New York, and she was telling me when she was in school, she was doing paintings with her menstrual blood. And this is not an unusual thing to have things like this, whether that's around nudity or other things. That's pretty normal. And that's not something that anyone blinks an eye at.
what is it? The like the picture of Virgin Mary that has elephant dung.
Yes.
You know, this sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's bringing in a whole other set of issues.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's really about the ideas that are behind the piece as opposed to the fact that, oh, this is a nude. And I think this, and maybe in Chattanooga, there is more an issue around nudity than an interest in other ideas. So whether that's fear related, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I just find it it's one of my pet peeves in art is, you know, why in certain cities or cultures is the human body rejected as a valid form of art. And it's can be difficult to present in certain galleries because I think some of the curators are concerned that the culture people around are going to react in a negative way.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, I have a dealer in the city, and I've been experimenting with some more erotic pieces, and he loves them. He says, please make it as crazy as you want. I said, well, that's not really my point. But there, you're actually encouraged to do things it's almost exploitive in another sense.
Well, I think, I know as an artist, I have a lot of that sort of work that I don't put out there.
Right.
You know, I think if we're working with our ideas, our inner heart, our passions, our soul, it was like we talked about earlier, Abigail, because some things are, like you said, you can create something and you feel it may be a failure.
Right.
We can never always create a masterpiece. That we have to have practice things. We have to have ones that we fail and when we learn, like you said.
Yes.
You know, so during those times, I think that's the really amazing thing that happens. And we just can't always expect ourselves to produce, you know, glorious works every moment.
Right. And I think that's something else really, you know, curating as an artist, curating your own work, having people around you who you trust, who can say this is good and this is not good. And that's not a bad thing that you're producing some bad work. That means you're expanding and you're learning. And I think also just in what you're looking at, to also curate that and be aware that everything you're looking at is an influence. And often I've found that maybe I'm not succeeding because I'm not aware or looking at the right things. So that's another point.
Constantly filling your mind and soul and thoughts with things in the world, images and experiences.
Right. And trying to, when you can, read the very best books, read the best in literature, look at the finest art of the past and of the present, and trying to find a way to really have that be like a oncoming stream that's sort of fueling itself, so you're not always having to grasp.
Yeah. Do you ever experience the wow, I'll never be able to do something that good experience?
Every day.
Okay.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah. Sometimes a gallery can be daunting to an artist.
Yeah, very much so. And I think for me, it's not so much galleries that are daunting, but the idea of making full spaces and working in collaborative groups, and that's something I'm very interested in. But that's very daunting to me.
Yes, because then you're putting it out there with other people to interact with, and you don't know how it's all going to go.
Right. And it's, yes. I think if you're only working on your own, you can kind of say, okay, I think I can, hopefully you can know what you can accomplish and what you can do. But when you're working with other people, it can be really, really great, but it can also have more potential for failure.
Sure. But I believe that the human spirit tends to go the other way for the most part, where we inspire one another when we do corroborate together.
Yeah, very often.
Yeah, most of the time it seems like that just inspires each other. And there's a basic need within people, I think, to, grow together. So, well, what else can we really share about you? What's, is there anywhere that right now you currently are showing that people could look up, or are you in between showing things?
I have some possible upcoming things, and I don't want to say too much about them because they're a little bit unclear as of yet, but I am working on some things in New York City. And like I said, honestly, right now I'm building this body of work, and I'm really trying to build it to a point where it's quite solid and quite large, and then I'm going to be presenting it to some galleries.
What would you consider large for a body of work?
I would like to have 15 to 20 pieces that are ranging in size from the smallest being 2 by 3 feet and the largest being maybe 4 by 8 feet. So 15 to 20 pieces like that is enough to have a full show, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, and you definitely that you need a good studio space for that.
Yes, yeah.
So do you stretch your own canvases?
I'm not working on canvas. Actually, I'm working on paper.
Okay.
It's a very large handmade paper.
Ooh.
And it's very beautiful. It's from India, and it's cotton-based. It's very, very thick. So I buy this in very large sheets. Imagine paying $50 for a sheet of paper, but this one's worth it.
It sure would be.
And yeah, I kind of like the fact that because it's paper, it is somewhat delicate and fragile, and it wears in my studio. It gets a little bit beat up around the edges, and I think that's really beautiful. I think a lot of art that I am interested in that's being made today and that was made in the past has that element of already being worn and not being entirely new. So paper gives me the ability to do that.
That little medieval flair there.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. I know I had an artist, Claire Bloomfield, on who used to make handmade paper, and she's to this day, she loves it, and she doesn't have the setup to do it at this time. But handmade, I mean, you're talking 4 by 8 sheets of paper?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious up to that process. I'd love to look that up and see how they make that large.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but right now the largest I'm working is a 5-foot sheet, and I don't have a bigger sheet yet, but they do make larger ones. But also sometimes you can piece 2 pieces together, so there's that question of having something that's pieced together, maybe something like a triptych.
Yes, and of course, if you're going to buy canvases that size, they're going to be probably more than $50.
Right, exactly.
So and it's like you said, more portable.
Right. Yeah. So and I think that's something. Recently, there was an exhibit at the modern wing of the Metropolitan called the Breuer, and it was of a woman called Marissa Mertz, and she was part of the art pauvreté movement, which is kind of about making art out of material that you have when you're poor. And I think this is
like Wayne-A-Rama.
Wait, I don't know who this is.
Oh, they totally take cardboard. There's a show at the Hunter Museum, I think, now.
Oh, okay.
It might open tomorrow. And similar concept. You found materials, cardboard, thing like they make amazing life-size puppets. And
yeah, something like that, where you're really allowing yourself to be limited by your situation and buy the materials you have, and buy, if you have poverty, buy that as well, and sort of working within that. So that's another reason why I really enjoy using the materials I use, because they're very simple. I make my own ink as well sometimes, not all the time, but.
So you make ink, and then say, I haven't had a chance to really look at what you're currently working on or talk to you about it. So what other mediums are you using on the paper?
I'm mostly just using ink and watercolor right now. I'm sort of hoping to experiment a little bit more with some other materials. I use gold ink as well. It's not real gold. So playing with some metallics, but just keeping it very simple. And I'm experimenting with other materials, but not in the actual body of work that I'm making. That's outside of it.
Right. That's something you're trying to have an established, cohesive body that speaks about what your current experience is.
Exactly.
Yes. So you said you were also writing. I'm curious about that. Can you tell us about what you write about?
My writing is really just so that I can process the different things that I'm seeing and maybe record them in some way where I can go back and say, oh yes, I had that idea about the relationship between a few different things. And I'm writing about things I see in exhibits, ideas that I find in other artists' work that I really like, but I may want to play around with in a different way.
So kind of a journaling.
Yes, it's
art journaling.
It's art journaling. And I've been recently reading Anselm Kiefer's notebooks. I believe it's from 1999 or maybe 1990. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. But I really have enjoyed reading his notes on how he thinks and works. And that was sort of helped me get an idea how I can also, I don't want to say perfect my writing because it's really, really awful, but get it to another level.
Well, it's not awful for you, right? It's useful for you.
Yes, it's useful. So, it's not something that I'm presenting. It's just something that I'm using.
Right, and I think this is great, Abigail, because we're with Abigail Tulis here, talking with a local born Chattanoogan artist who has now traveled through parts of the world and is currently working in New York City. So Abigail has done sculpture and two-dimensional work, drawings, paintings, and all manner of beautiful things. You can find her on abigailtulis.com. And the part that we were talking about with one of the ideas that came to my mind when you spoke, that is some of the common concept is that, and this is something I've even encountered here at the station, you guys, but that all artists must be hippies. You know, we're perceived as these bohemian hippies, and yet I see, number one, I'm not a hippie, and I am a professional, but I kind of always say I'm a gypsy princess too. And you kind of have a bohemian lifestyle to a point, but your intellectual part of what you're expressing here comes into play in art. It's not just throwing some paint around. This is a serious study that you've got, a serious life of being an artist that is very important to you.
Right. Well, I think it's maybe because of the way artists are depicted in films and in TV shows. I think that there is definitely a stereotype that people have of that. But I think that, first of all, there's a tremendous amount of discipline and thought that goes into work that's not shown. And I also think that, honestly, artists have always been very bohemian and rather wild. Recently, I read an autobiography of an Italian sculptor from the 15th century, Benedetto Cellini, and he was wild. He was always traveling around, getting into fights, and what we would consider maybe possibly someone who's hippie or free-spirited.
Not quite marching with the beat to society.
No, definitely not. And there were artists who did that as well. But I think just realizing that there's a broad range and people who are creative have always looked different.
Yeah, somehow what happens in that brain comes out in your life. It's the creative synapses that fire, the ideas, the thoughts that come. Yes, you create. You know, one thing creates another. And I write as well, but I mostly write poetry. But the creative thoughts, I can tell, even speaking with you, Abigail, is, you know, it is the driving force of your life. It's
right, and it's what shapes all the different areas. And I think I had a sculpture teacher, and he always said, if you can sculpt well, you can live well. And the idea that these things are connected and making correct judgments about a sculpture or about a decision in your own life are the same thing.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
I guess I'll have to try sculpture.
Well,
Honestly,
I
when I was
think it
going to start
works.
with clay, I got pregnant, and you really can't work a lot with clay when there's a child in there because it can be toxic.
Okay.
So I kind of just went to the 2-dimensional because I had 5 kids after that. And I was like, well, forget the clay, but now I could try it.
Well, I think it works. I think it's not just about sculpture. I think that's really about creative judgment when you're making any sort of, whether 2-dimensional image or 3-dimensional object.
Yes, it's very interesting, I think. And I'm sure that as you're progressing in your work, you're young, your work's going to go a lot of different directions. And as you're learning, you find that, you're trying something, you're practicing something, and you discover a whole new realm to bring into your work.
Absolutely. And I feel like, honestly, every year there's a whole nother sphere of art history, or maybe what's happening right now, that I suddenly realize I never knew about this, and I never was able to look at this, and now I am. And it's just a constantly expanding world.
Yeah, it's like it's the universe, it's just the whole universe, and it's an exciting thing. I'm very excited for you. Had I had this sort of opportunities at 25, I can just imagine how much fun it would be, how exciting and challenging.
Yeah, it's definitely a little scary, but
a little scary.
I complain to my friends sometimes, and they tell me, listen, Abigail, most people would really give a lot to be in your situation, to have the option to live abroad, to live in New York City, to do what they want every day. And yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, but you've created that energy for yourself too, and your family has supported you in this. And you're creating that, and that's why it's happening, and Providence and all that. But without you going through the doors and knocking on the doors of life, if they can't open.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's always how I try to think about it. If the door opens, I at least look through the door.
Right. I think also I think a lot of people say, oh, they talk about talent or inherent artistic talent, and I'm not really sure how much I believe in that. I really think it's something you foster through just having routine, working regularly, putting in the hours, and that's something that is really undermined. But I do work a lot.
Yes, and that's exactly what it does take, is a lifetime of dedication to the art, to your art, to the thoughts and the process. It is work. My place looks like a bomb went off right now. I've got paintings everywhere in different stages because I'm going to be hanging. So, well, Abigail Tulis, Chattanooga-born artist, having gone abroad and now in New York City with a lot of excitement ahead in your life. I am so thankful you could be with us today.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Yeah, and look forward to following you as you proceed in your art journey, and I hope you come back and share.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can follow me on my Instagram.
Sure.
My name.
Abigail Tulis, but I also would love to follow you in person as you come back to Chattanooga, have you back and catch up. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Art Beat of Chattanooga.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life.